Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining our online academy here at the Aquarium of the Pacific. My name is Alicia, and I'm excited to be talking to you today all about birds, specifically our cold water marine birds, birds that live or at least get their resources from the ocean. And so I have a couple people helping me today, and they're going to be helping to take questions and operate our studio as we're running here at the aquarium. So I have my friend Dana, who's helping me kind of behind the scenes, and my friend Dave. And if you would like to participate along with us today, if you have permission from adult, you can text to our number here at 562-286-1838. And so I'd love your questions about birds. I'd love comments, fun facts that you already know. You can answer some of the questions that we're going to be asking throughout the program today. I'm really excited. So for those that have seen maybe some of my other live programs, I get very excited about any of our topics, but I do have a fondness for birds. And I think one of the reasons that I love birds so much is because there's such a diversity. There's so many different kinds of birds. And so there are birds, of course, that you probably see in your backyards or on the way to school. And our backyard birds are really fun to watch. And here at the Aquarium of the Pacific, we feature some birds that live in or around the Pacific Ocean. And some of those birds live in some very cold water habitats. And so when we think about these birds, I want us to also think about what special things do they have on their bodies that help them survive in these really interesting habitats. How do they have their babies? How do they maybe find their mates? So we're going to be talking about some of these, what we call our diving birds, as well as we'll travel to the other hemisphere and talk about our penguins today. So I wanted to start off by kind of going over some of those general bird characteristics. What makes a bird a bird? Well, I want you just to kind of think about that. So if you can think of a couple of things that are special just for birds and you would like to text in, you can text in. If you don't have the ability to text in, just remember that normal texting rates do apply. And again, you have to have permission from an adult. If you don't have that option, you can go ahead and write it down. Or you can tell someone in your house, just share with them. So what makes a bird a bird? What are some special things on their bodies that make them different from mammals like us, or let's say reptiles or fish? All of those things are good things to kind of consider if you were studying birds. And I want us to think like explorers today. So we're going to be looking for details, we're going to be asking good questions, and we're going to, you can jot down or kind of remember some of the things that we're exploring. And so I'll have my friend Dina put up a little video that we took of some of our birds that live in the northern hemisphere, the upper part of our planet. They live actually far north, up in that Alaska, even those Aleutian Islands area of our planet. So they live far, far north where it's nice and cold. And so we'll put up one of our diving bird exhibits. Now, this exhibit has 4 different kinds of what we call diving birds. And they're not closely related, except for they are birds, and we'll revisit again those characteristics. But they are adapted. They have special things on their bodies that allow them to survive in this home. So let's go ahead and take a look. There we go. Yay! So if you've been to the aquarium, you have probably seen some of our diving birds before. And so this is kind of the view if you were to come toward the aquarium, and you can see some of our little friends here in the background. How many different kinds of birds can you find in there? And what are some of the colors that you see? Do you see any differences between them? Do you see anything special on their bodies that might help them live in this habitat? What does this habitat kind of look like? So we froze the picture there, which is great. Again, we kind of went up there and recorded some of our little diving bird friends. And so let's take a look at some of our little feathered friends here. So we have right here in front of me, this is called a pigeon guillemot. And you can kind of see it does have a little bit of a pigeon-like face to it. And you probably have noticed that it has some of these dark colors. And what we're seeing here is a change from its summer colors into its kind of winter colors. So it's transitioning, I'm sorry, into its spring colors. So it was going from a very dark look to a lighter look to a nice, sleek, darker color. And so this is kind of what the pigeon guillemot is changing to. It's changing into this color here. And so you can see it still has kind of these patchy colors all over its body. Now, making it a bird, right? What does it have on its body? Do we have any guesses? Were you able to shout out anything? Ah, thank you, Dana. This is a great photo. So, yeah, you're probably thinking it's beak. And we'll take a closer look at some examples of beaks. But that is definitely a characteristic that all birds have. Now, how the beak is shaped and how they use their beak is very, very different for this group. Something else that we can't see from the outside, but it's kind of good to remember, is that this is an animal that is a vertebrate. So if you feel around on your back, we have a backbone. Well, our animals here, they also have bones, they have a spine, and that's really kind of interesting because if you're a bird, you, if you're a pigeon guillemot, you fly some of the time, and some of the time you dive. Now, not all birds can fly, right? Can you think of a bird that doesn't fly? Yeah. Well, we're going to be visiting that bird in a little bit. But, you know, it's really interesting to think that these animals, they do have to fly. So they do have, so our pigeon guillemot here, I wouldn't say is the best in flight because it has to have some special adaptations for diving. And again, it is a vertebrate. And so those bones, one of the characteristics for a bird generally is that it has hollow bones. That makes it nice and light. Now, something that's a little bit different with diving birds is they not only have kind of those hollow bones, but to make them a little bit heavier than regular birds, they have kind of a crisscross pattern inside their bones that add a little bit of weight and strength to their bones so that these diving birds are a little bit heavier that allow them to dive. And I think we have some underwater footage of them diving down. Why do you think that they're diving underwater in the first place? Why not just fly around at the sides? Wow, look. So if we were to see them actually flying, they wouldn't be as graceful as they are underwater. They're very quick underwater. And we're seeing some of the little auklets, and we'll talk about our auklets next because they're really adorable. And they're just so graceful. What's aiding them in swimming besides using those wings? Did you kind of see those wings are being used to move underwater? Yeah, you probably guessed it. They have these webbed feet. So looking at their feet is very important. Great. So we had someone say that they have wings. Good job. So those wings can be used differently, right? So they have beaks. We said that they have a spine, and they have wings. That's really special, right? So most birds have those things. Now, how they use their wings, what size they are, that can be very different because there are many different birds living in different habitats, places around the world. Because these are diving birds, they have adaptations to help them dive into the water and catch their food. And so that is one of the reasons that they have the shape to their body, those webbed feet, and even those different shaped beaks on their body. Let's go ahead and take another look at one of these diving birds. So the pigeon guillemot and our little auklet here are eating different things. The pigeon guillemot had a very long pointed beak, and then this bird here has a kind of a short, stubbier beak. And in fact, some of our birds in the exhibit are eating bigger fish, like our tufted puffins and our horned puffins, which we'll look at next. And some of them are eating smaller prey, like little tiny shrimp-like animals called krill. And those krill are fast, and they swim in schools, and they're scooped up by these little auklets. And what else do you notice about this auklet? Do you notice anything interesting about it? You might have noticed that it has this little tiny feather that sticks off the top of its head. Now, sometimes birds use their feathers for flying. Sometimes they use their feathers for staying warm. As you can imagine, the water is pretty cold in the northern Pacific. And so they use them for a variety of things, and sometimes they use their feathers to show off, to say, I am very, very healthy. You should pick me to be your mate. And so our little birds here strut around. They show off this little plume, as they call it, this feather, and they actually have a little scent, which is not as common for birds. They smell apparently like tangerines. I personally have not sniffed one of these birds, but they show that they're nice and healthy, and they find a mate by the way they smell, how good their feathers look, and that tells them that I would be the best choice to starting a family because I am nice and healthy. I keep myself healthy. I know how to catch food. And that really is something that's common for a lot of birds, is that they have kind of a way to show how healthy they are when they find a mate. And so one of the ways that our little auklets do that is with this little extra feather. Let's go over actually to, I have a special camera called our document camera, and it's going to allow me to take a peek at some different feathers here, and I can show you some of that diversity. So we're going to take a quick peek at some examples of feathers just to kind of show you on here, and I'll zoom in just a moment, that feathers can come in many different shapes and sizes, and they can be used for different things. And even on the same bird, they can be very, very different. And there's a little bit of delay with my camera, so I'll try to keep up here. See if you can figure out which one of my group here belongs to a bird that dives under the water. And we'll move our, there we go. And we're going to zoom in a little bit. Again, there's a little bit of a delay, so I apologize. It's hard for me to see when it doesn't quite show me what it is showing you at the same time. All right. How is that, Dana? Can you see that on your screen really well? Yeah, we'll see if we can let's even go a little brighter here to see if we can have some of those colors. I'm not sure if you're seeing. We'll go up a little bit. Okay, so just looking at shape, right? So I have a little pile here. Which one of these, hopefully that helps a little bit. The fourth one. The fourth one. Which one belongs to a bird that swims? And they're saying this one over here, I'm guessing. So you are right. Good job. So yeah, we're looking at a couple different feathers here. We're looking at a hawk feather on this side. We're looking at, actually these are both to our lorikeets, and we can show you a picture in just a moment of our lorikeets that we have, which is a type of parrot. And then the one over here, this belongs to our diving birds. And they're a little bit different, right? They're shorter, and they're a little bit kind of fluffier. And we'll zoom in a little bit later when we talk about our puffins. Oh, thank you, Dana. So if you have more questions. Yeah, so we're looking at different uses for feathers. If you're swimming underwater and you're trying to catch your food, it is cold. So you want to make sure that you have feathers to help trap air, which is really important so that your body can heat that air up and act like a little jacket for you. And you want to make sure that you don't have water coming in too fast, so you can kind of keep that air trapped as long as you can. And then if you're a flighted bird, as they call it, a bird that flies, you're going to use your feathers differently, right? You're going to use your feathers to get some lift. You want the air to help lift you up into, into the sky so that you can hunt for your prey or maybe even avoid being caught by a predator. And our lorikeets here, they have shorter feathers that are a little bit, they're actually much more colorful. It's hard to see here, but they're a bright green, and that helps them with their camouflaging. So that's another way that they use their feathers. This is the outside of their body. So they're going to be using, just like There are animals that have camouflage with their scales for fish or their skin, like an octopus. You have feathers that are the outside of your body, so you're going to be using coloration to help you camouflage. Even our hawk here is using some of those darker colors because it's catching some of those rodents in those grassy areas. So as it's kind of flying around, it might be a little bit more hidden using these colors. All right, let's go ahead and take a peek at another one of our diving birds and see if we, I'll have Dana just pick another one for us, maybe our tufted, there we go. And so again, we're looking at another example of one of our diving birds. This one's a little bit different, right? It actually has a much broader, our thicker skull to it. And I think we had some examples. Let's see, where did we put our, oh, okay. So the color that you see here changes just like the feathers will change during different parts of the year. So in some parts of the year, they're going to be nice and bright so that they can show off to finding a mate. In other times of the year, they might actually be a little bit more camouflaged. And so this is a very brightly colored bird showing that, to me, it looks like it's wearing a turtleneck, a really tight turtleneck, and almost like it has blonde hair coming over. That's how I remember the tufted puffin. Of course, it's feathers, it's not hair, and these feathers can be really elaborate. This right here isn't going to help the tufted puffin swim or find its food. It is really just there to show off how healthy it is when finding a mate. This bird can hold many, many little schooling fish in its beak at a time, and it can bring that back to its nest. So that's another thing to consider, right? If you live in the cold water habitats, raising your babies, right? What are you going to do for your baby? So a lot of these diving birds, and you know, as we explore our penguins next, they have to find little rocky outlets to raise their young. And some of their eggs even are designed so that they don't roll off these cliff sides, which is pretty cool. So if they were to, if you think of like a chicken egg, that would roll right off the side. But the special shape of the eggs for some of these cliff nesting birds actually are a little bit more shaped in an oval, and it's not equal on each side. So if it does happen to roll a little bit, it rolls in a circle, which is pretty cool. All right, we do have some questions here. How long do they hold their breath? So a lot of these birds hold their breath anywhere from like a minute to 5 minutes, and it can kind of depend. A lot of their food is a little bit closer to the surface. And so it depends on the bird though. The cormorant bird is one of the deepest diving out there, and it's a type of diving bird. We don't have a picture of it, but it can go down really, really far, and I'm not sure how long they hold their breath for, but because, a couple minutes? Okay, so Dave said just a couple minutes, but even though it's a couple minutes, their sleek body, they have a really long neck, and their feathers are a little bit different. The cormorant bird, if you've ever been to the beach and you've seen a bird drying out by sticking its wings out, and that is because it doesn't have the same type of oil on it. And so it's not as oil resistant, but at the same time, that allows the bird to dive deeper. So it has to actually come out and dry out its wings in between diving because it does get a little cold. So a lot of these birds, their food, for most of them who are diving, just a couple of minutes. And then where can you find puffins? That's a great question. So those puffins we're talking about, maybe we can look at the other puffin really quick, that horned puffin. You can find the horned puffin up again in kind of that Alaska area, up in the Aleutian Islands. They're just beautiful animals. They really are to me. And they have, you can see, again, thinking about those diving birds, they have feathers that are a little bit shorter because they're not trying to get lift as they fly as much as some of those, like a hawk who's staying up there in the thermals for a long period of time. Although these birds can fly, they're better at swimming. And they have those, again, specialized bones to help them dive. They're a little heavier. So they can fly, but I wouldn't say that they're flying for really long distances. They use this counter shading, which is really popular for ocean animals, meaning they have a darker coloration on the top, lighter on the bottom. And that allows them to, you know, if you're prey and you're looking up, it's harder to find something that's lighter. And if you're a predator looking down, you might not see the puffin swimming because of the dark that they have on their belly, or on their back. Sorry, I got distracted. We had a couple more questions. So Addison had asked, how many species of diving birds in the Pacific Northwest? Addison, it looks like there's about 20 total globally. I'm not sure exactly how many in the Pacific Northwest, but there are about 20 globally, different kinds of diving birds, which is pretty cool. All right, we're going to change. I'm going to go ahead and show you a little bit of a map. And, you know, we've been talking about the northern hemisphere. So we've been looking kind of on the top part of the planet. And so if we look at this map, we've been talking about our diving birds that are, a lot of them are right around this area over here. So they're up in the Alaska area. You can find them in these cold water habitats. And then we're going to kind of talk about our southern hemisphere birds. Now, penguins, there's about 17 species of penguins. And I think even as a kid, I always thought, you know, penguins always live on ice. But there's only 2 penguins that spend their time on ice year-round. And that is the emperor penguin and the little Adelie penguin. Now, there are penguins who will visit and during different times of the year, these really cold, icy places to raise their young. And so it just really depends on the time of year. So there might be more penguins in the Antarctic and some of those cold island areas off of in the kind of South Pole region. But we do also have a lot of these penguins that live just a little bit farther north, including the penguin that we have here at the aquarium, which is the Magellanic Penguin. And the Magellanic Penguin actually lives in South America. So this is their range here and off the Falkland Islands. And it's pretty incredible. So we can go ahead and show the beach picture, the penguin beach picture. So this is an example of the penguin that we have here at the aquarium, the Magellanic Penguin. And you can see that their habitat doesn't have any ice because this is a South American location. And it is actually pretty similar to what we would find off of our California coast. It's dry, it's hot, and the water is nice and cool. This is important though because they find their food in the water. They're kind of like commuter birds. They like to travel long distances to find little schooling fish to eat, and they rely on this cold water to have nice nutrient-rich resources for their little fish prey to eat. So basically, the food webs out here are really thick. They're really abundant, and it allows them to find their food out here. And then Drew and Luke ask, how deep can they dive? And so diving birds have been recorded to dive about 200 feet. Good question, Drew and Luke. Again, if you have any questions, we'll put up that text for you. You'll also notice that the birds are all gathered on this beach at the same time. And a lot of this happens for their mating time when they're ready to have babies. And so this is actually a time here at the aquarium for our own collection of penguins. So right now we're adding nesting material, and maybe we can go to that webcam in just a moment. We've been adding like palm fronds and things for our Magellanic penguins to build their nests with. And their nests are found, we have an example. There's the backside of a penguin. I think they're adorable no matter what side we're looking at, but that was the backside of the penguin. So they're going to actually hike out, and they waddle. So that's what we call That's what we call the motion of the penguin is a waddle, right? They don't have long legs like some other birds. Their legs are really short and and stubby because that helps them as they're maneuvering through their water environment. And they have those web feet to help kind of push them, and they use those wings to steer, right? So they have that football shape to them that helps them move quick through the water. But that also means that it's a little challenging as they're walking out on land. But they do it. They walk all the way out, and then they're actually going to burrow. They dig a nest, which is crazy. They use their beak. They dig in, and they will first the male will find a location. So you can see there's nice soft dirt behind this penguin, and he's going to dig a burrow, something that they can hide in, and also put inside some soft nesting material, like some of the plants that they would find. Sometimes they put little rocks on the outside. So it depends on the type of penguin, but this nesting behavior is very common. So they're going to build this up, and then the females come in, and if they've already picked a mate in the past year, then they'll call to each other. And it's pretty amazing because there's thousands of penguins, and they know what the other penguin sounds like. They know what their mate's call sounds like, which I think is pretty cool. So, oh, okay, thanks, Dina. So there is a nest actually that I was standing, of course, right in front of. So this hole right here is the nest, and this male is waiting for his female. And so again, he would call, she would come up. Now, if a male hasn't found a mate yet, he would still build a nice burrow, and then the single females will come by and inspect the burrow. They do a little ritual. They kind of size each other up, and then they decide, okay, did you make this home? Did I like it? Am I going to approve of you being my mate? And typically, they mate for life. So they choose their partners, and then every year they will find that same penguin. Unless they're not really good at raising babies, and they might change up their partners. And I think we have some more pictures of our Magellanic penguins. Now, those burrows can be 6 feet down, which is pretty incredible. And they will lay one egg first, and then usually a couple days later, they'll lay their second egg. This is great because what we're seeing here is they're candling the egg, which means that they're adding light to see if the egg is fertilized. And so this is the palm frond. This is here at the aquarium. These are the nesting materials that we've offered. You can see the little egg that we have here. And then look at this tiny dinosaur. Oh my goodness. So this is an example of a Magellanic penguin chick. And you can see they have a very different, they're covered in these soft down feathers all around their body. They have yet to grow in those nice sleek covering all over them, which is pretty incredible. Now, something we're not seeing here, but it's on our website if you were to investigate a little bit more. We have, if the little chick were to open its mouth, you would see little extensions actually in its mouth that like little barbs to help keep the food in its mouth. And as it's older, its mouth, they're open, looks a little scary actually. It has all of these little barbs to make sure that the fish that they're catching doesn't escape. Look, it doesn't take them very long. Now, I'll have to take a step back and tell you that because our penguins spend most of their time in the ocean, that's where their food is, that's where they're most comfortable moving around. They're not coming out on land unless they're ready to have their babies. And then they do something called a catastrophic molt, which is, molting is just a term for losing and regrowing feathers in birds. And that's really helpful because there's a lot of wear and tear that happens with these feathers. And they use them again to stay warm, to be nice and sleek, and they use them for camouflage and eventually to show off to their mate. Now, in order to prepare for this time of being out of the water and even not eating, they're going to eat a whole lot to prepare. And here at the aquarium, they have a big appetite. In fact, they eat so much that our little penguins, they wear little name bands on them so that we know who is who, we have to trim those and make new ones because they get so chubby. And then, but they need that extra chubbiness, right? Because they're not going to be eating for a long period of time. Now, we do still offer food to them because they're here at the aquarium. And sometimes they eat, sometimes they don't. But they're kind of ready for that. And now, they don't get this double, I'm glad we put this picture back up. They don't have this nice double stripe until they're at least a year old and they are going through their first molt. So that picture that we were just looking at of the 3 younger chicks, they don't have that stripe yet. But once they go through that first molt, which is kind of a funny time for them because they lose their feathers in big chunks. You know, you kind of think of this chubby, grumpy, itchy penguin, and then all of a sudden the penguin will reach down and take out a bunch of old feathers. So to me, it always looks like they've lost a pillow fight in our exhibit. There's like big chunks of feathers that are just blowing around. But it's because their new feathers are growing right underneath and pushing the old feathers out, and that can be kind of itchy for them. And so oftentimes they do a special cleaning called a preening, and that helps them. All right, I'm going to go ahead and answer some questions here. Tegan asked, do penguins hold their breath? Yes, that's a great question. So they have lungs just like we do. That's another characteristic. They breathe air. And because they live in a marine environment, they have to hold their breath. Zoe asked, how long do penguins live? That's a great question. So the Magellanic penguins live, which we think is the longest, which can be up to around 20 years. And that's been recorded even in their natural habitat. There's been some good research out there with a nesting group that had been nesting for over a decade together, which is pretty crazy. So they think about 10 to 20 years. So for some penguins, it might be closer to the 10 range, but for Magellanic penguins, they think it's closer to the 20. Oh, that's a great question. How high is their temperature? You know what? I'm not sure how high their temperature is. They are warm-blooded, like us, so they have to stay the same temperature on the inside of their body to be happy. And that's why they need those feathers to trap air and keep them nice and warm. If you've ever seen our penguins swimming around, we might actually have, I don't think we have any penguins in the water right now. Oh, 101. Wow. So they have a higher normal temperature every day than we do. So, you know, our temperature's a little bit lower when we're happy. We'll go ahead and just put up one of the penguin cams. We'll see what's going on. So we'll have Dana put something up as we look through our questions here. Oh, thank you. So if you ever see the penguins dive and you see all those little bubbles, that's not what you think. Those bubbles are because they have spent all that time trapping the air, and as they dive deeper, that water kind of squeezes a little bit, and so you see those bubbles releasing right here. There you go. So eventually the penguin has to come up and kind of regroup. Sometimes they'll move their feathers around and trap more air, but that's why they look so puffy. I think that's what makes them look so cute too. Oh, great questions. Do they migrate? Yeah, there are definitely a lot of penguins, as we were saying before, that migrate to different areas to have their young. So they might, during the rest of the year, look for their food in the water in one place and then travel to the next to have their babies. All right. Dyron asked, why do they nest in spring and not winter? Oh, any guesses? Well, you know, a lot of that has to do with temperature. So a lot of birds nest when it's nice and mild. The weather is mild, but that's not for all birds. Some birds do it at a certain time that makes sense so that when the birds are ready to go out into their natural habitat, they have enough food ready for them. So it kind of depends on the bird. How much food do they eat? So our penguins have about 5 herring. That's a fish. And then how fast do they swim? I think we were looking, I always say, yes, I remember that. I thought it was 15, it was like 10 to 15 miles per hour. Can puffins hold a lot of fish in their beaks? That was from Aiden. Yes, Aiden, they absolutely can hold a lot of fish in their beaks, and that's because they want to carry as much back to their nest. It's been recorded at 22 little fish, which is pretty amazing. It is actually really interesting to see all the little fish faces in a row in their beaks. And what is the feather on the far left? So when we were looking at our feathers on the document cam, that far left photo here, I think it was this one. This is the lorikeet. Maybe you can put up that lorikeet picture. So this is the lorikeet. This is a type of parrot that we have here at the aquarium. Now some of the colors here are some of the feathers here are shorter, and they're used to help keep the animal nice and warm, and also for camouflage. You know, having feathers on your body is also a little bit of a protection. And so some of these shorter feathers aren't used for flying, and they're a little bit, shorter, and they're a little bit fluffier at the bottom. They have those down feathers. Lots and lots of questions here. So it says the Gentoo penguin can swim up to 22 miles per hour. I think we have a picture of one of those adorable little Gentoo penguins. And then 4 to 7 miles per hour. Okay, so I was saying is typical. Aiden, we answered Aiden's. And then why do skuas fly if penguins and puffins dive? That's a great question. So the skua is a predator of these birds. We don't have a picture, but they basically, you know, because the skua is a predator, it actually eats penguins, especially penguin chicks. It's going to fly to be able to grab its prey. And the puffin, it's okay. We can't fight. There we go. So these are different pictures of the skua. So they are a predator, and they actually eat other birds. And you know, their adaptation for doing that is flying, whereas the puffins are diving for their food. Well, I am very over my time, but again, I could just keep talking about birds. There's so many fun things. I hope this has inspired you explorers to continue to ask questions. Don't forget, you can always email us more questions at live@lbaop, or if you're watching this after we have done the broadcast and you're still curious about things, again, there is so much to explore. We only explored just a few things, a few examples. And, again, I hope this was the start of your curiosity so that you continue to look up more things about these birds. And we have lots of programming today, so I hope you stay tuned for the Aquarium's Online Academy. Thank you, everyone, for visiting us this morning.